Drive!
Five.
I thought we were. That's my bad. I thought we were recording. Okay. So yeah, I have 6 notes, and I want to take back what I said last week.
And it's not a superhero movie?
It is not a superhero movie.
I have to agree. When I think I've seen, this is like my 5th or 6th viewing of it. I thought that he only wore his jacket when he was doing
crime.
Yes, but he doesn't. And then I thought it was his gloves. I thought that his gloves were going to be like the thing, but no.
And
so yeah.
Actually, before we begin on Drive, I want to issue a small retraction from last week where we did Perfume.
Yes.
So after I watched the movie again because I wasn't satisfied with the way it was, and I sent Heath a text message. Probably, I mean, you were probably like still asleep, and I'm sitting there like,
"What is it?"
And I figured it out. It's a vampire movie. If you look at Perfume and think of Granwy as a vampire, and this is a vampire origin story, so much more of the movie makes sense. Anyway, that was my discovery well after the fact.
It was a very interesting note. I thought, like, the more I think about it, the whole, I guess I wouldn't say it was like self-serious, but it's definitely a little more pointed.
Yeah.
Except for Dustin Hoffman's whole segment. I mean, he says "Mamma Mia" at one point. Like, I'm surprised he didn't go, "It's a me." Like, it was very like,
yeah,
you are not Italian.
Right. Well, he was supposed to be French.
I thought they were, okay, not French then.
Oh, was he Italian?
I thought he was Italian.
Oh, maybe he was Italian in a movie about French people.
Because isn't grass in Italy? Isn't that the whole thing?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
So Drive.
Yes. So, God, why? I can't remember why I picked Drive. There's some discernment in the last episode that, I don't know, whatever. So I picked Drive. Partially because I've been wanting to rewatch it. It's I wouldn't put it in like a top 5 or 10 of my favorite movies, maybe, but it definitely is. It holds like a really special place in my soul for one very specific reason, and it's that I didn't grow up with a father, and
this movie's all about.
Yeah, it really hit me. I was driving, actually, and had it on safely. I have it mounted, and I watch the road as I drive. I just was running behind and needed to get it watched. And because it's a very quiet movie from what we have figured out. Like, every copy that I saw was so quiet.
Can I go ahead and say that the sound design for this movie is not great? Don't get me wrong, it's better than what I think I could do, but it's not great.
Score and soundtrack, on the other hand, are thumbs up like 100 times for me.
The dynamic range on it is enormous, which, like, most movies, they try to get a wide dynamic range, but this one is so wide that, like, it's unwatchable at volumes quieter than blaring. It's also like I had to readjust the power going to my speakers because I couldn't watch it loud enough to hear the dialogue. Like,
and I don't know what that is. Like, on my phone, it was fine.
Well, your phone offers a huge bit of compression, which basically takes that dynamic range, the highest high, the lowest low, and brings them a lot closer together, like you would on tape. Like if we were to record Drive onto a VHS tape, it would bring that way down and would probably be more close to what we're used to. But not only is the dynamic range way all over the place, there are times when the dialogue doesn't sync up with their lips.
Oh.
And that's like a huge thing where I'm like, you've got a close-up of Albert. My camera work is as good as the audio production on Drive.
And my lighting is as good. I need to...
We'll hang a bed sheet up right there but like it's a close up of Albert Brooks's face and he's speaking and the dialogue is just not synced up perfectly. Like it's close enough,
yeah,
but it's not perfect. And when you've got a close up of someone's face, it's got to be perfect.
Yeah, it's unforgivable. I didn't notice it because I was watching The Road.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have had movies, granted they were bootleg copies, but I refused to watch them. I'm like, no, this will drive me absolutely berserk. So to dig into the film, if you will, Nicholas Winding Refn, it's the guy that directed it, or Winding, whatever his name is.
It's quite a name. I love it. I love the name.
Yeah. I meant to look up what else he's done because I want to say he did Blue Valentine. But that might have been See in France. He, I believe, did the Elle Fanning Models in L.A. movie that was
Neon Demon?
Neon Demon, yeah.
I love Neon Demon. That would make perfect sense to me.
I wanted to like it, but man, I couldn't get into it.
Oh, I loved it.
I think that's
it. Finish.
And I don't want to. So anyway, my notes in my phone are me trying to justify that it's a superhero film. So I'm like, all right, his burner phone, that's his bat signal. Scorpion jacket is his like suit. Bryan Cranston is like his handler. And then I was like, no, it doesn't work. Because as I was watching, I'm like, oh, the one thing that throws a wrench in is that he wears his jacket in non-heroic moments or non-superhuman moments.
Yeah.
But then, anyway, the whole thing falls apart. So we don't know a lot about the kid. He has no name, Ryan Reynolds, Gosling, excuse me.
Credited as the driver.
Yeah. So I struggle when movies don't give their main leads a name.
Fight Club.
I think it was,
like Fight Club.
Yeah. So I was going to say I struggle with it, but there are a few films that have done it well. Fight Club being one, and I would say Layered Cake another one. Because when you have to refer to the character, they always have to say like, hey, or the kid, or the guy, or this. And I don't think they ever do that in those two movies, for example. Like, it's always just clear that they're talking to the character. Movies.
I think it absolutely works in Drive. We'll get into why, but okay. I want you to know why I think they made the deliberate choice to not give him a name.
I'm sure there is. I was just going to say, I think that like movies that do it poorly would be like Purple Rain, where they call him like the kid. And then I was going to say Drive, but I'm sure you will convince me otherwise.
I'm literally working on a cover from Purple Rain right now for music stuff.
Man, my notes are all over the place. I tried to anyway. So one of my favorite parts.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So we've got the kid, and he is a stunt driver. Well, he's a getaway driver, and that's how the beginning is. Like, he gives them 5 minutes to do their deed, and then he gets them the hell out of Dodge, and then that's it. You never talk to him again. He's done. They're done. So the beginning scene is them pulling off a heist of some sort, and Ryan Gosling, the kid, the driver, whatever, loses the cops in a very realistic, I would say, car chase. I mean, while I like the Baby Driver getaway a lot more, this one is more believable.
The one from Baby Driver was definitely fun.
Yeah. And then he's watching the news at the beginning, like when he's in his hotel room or whatever. It's on sports news, I think. And there's a reason for that, because he's also listening to it on the radio. Mm-hmm. He's trying to time it perfectly to get to the garage at Staples Center so he can blend in with the crowd to leave. And he does it perfectly.
Absolutely. Great scene as he's adjusting. He's got 2 radios on, one with the basketball game and one with the police scanner. Yeah. And he's using one to brush off the other.
Yeah.
Great opening.
It's fantastic.
Opening.
And as much as I would like to see the rest of that movie, it's not what happens. I don't think so. It's not a I'm a getaway driver movie. It's not a heist movie. So
trying to give you that long stare. It's fine. We'll get there.
It becomes I don't even think the driver has an arc, really. I think that he starts the way that he ends. I think he was always the same person. I think that and I was going to say this later, you can definitely sense or feel the like simmering rage underneath the driver at certain points. I don't think it ever really goes away unless he's with
Irene
and
come on.
Yeah, right. Gosh, what is this? Dexy's Midnight Runners. I forget the kid's name.
Benicio.
But I wanted to say Benicio, but I don't want to be wrong.
Benicio del Toro, but young.
Yeah, right, exactly.
He
doesn't have that
biopic about his youth,
which would be awesome. He has this like rage unless he's with them, and you can see that he really has a pure heart, I guess, with them. Getting derailed anyway. So he's a stunt driver by day, is a mechanic with Bryan Cranston's character Shannon, who has a walking problem for reasons. And
Ron Perlman style reasons.
Yeah, Ron Perlman style reasons. So we learned that Cranston is the one that kind of sets up his driving opportunities in all senses of the word, because he books his stunts and he also books his crimes. So we meet Irene. It's Carey Mulligan's his neighbor, and he starts to see them around town. Her car's broken down. They take it to the shop that he works at, and Shannon's kind of stages their meet cute, if you will, as much as there can be in such a violent film. And the driver takes them home, but before, he takes them for a drive in a very, very famous LA canal. It's in Terminator 2. I think it's probably in Escape from LA. So, and he takes them on a drive, and colleges a real hero plays, and that's what got me. Is he is like a hero to Benicio. His father, Oscar Isaac, is currently in prison, and
for being a part of the rebellion.
Yeah. And the driver, Ryan Gosling, is very much filling a parental role in this part. Benicio sitting on Carey Mulligan's lap as they drive, and it could have been a car commercial. Like, that's how almost saccharine it is, but it works. I think so. So a little later, Oscar Isaac is out of prison, and there's already tension between Gosling and him, because Benicio's been talking about him as mommy's new friend, which in Oscar Isaac's head means they're smashing for all the millennials out there, which I don't think they ever did. It's not, they don't say it, but I don't think he ever does. We eventually meet Albert Brooks, who is Bernie.
Yeah,
I want to say, yeah. Sorry, I didn't write any names down. Bernie and Nino. Nino is Ron Perlman, and his, as we stated, the most Ron Perlman he has ever been. He, at one point, I wrote it down just so I didn't flub it. He's talking about a nice car that Shannon has in his garage, because they're going to get into racing stock cars. Shannon gets a loan from Bernie to buy this really shitty stock car because they're going to have the driver drive. And Ron Perlman, Nino's like, you wasted $300,000 on this. If I'm going to spend $300,000, I want someone to see it. Sees a very nice car and says, "This is a fine ass motherfucking pussy wagon, motherfucker." And like this very, like, I'm from New Jersey, but I claim New York City style, like, ugh. So it's awesome. And Albert Brooks is playing against type. He's usually a comic relief, if you will, but he is terrifying in Drive. But terrifying in, like, not an overt way. You just get this feeling that things are not going to go well. And what's awesome is that the movie, Benicio actually foreshadows it, kind of. So he meets Bernie, the driver does, and Bernie puts his hands out to shake his hand, and Ryan Gosling just kind of looks at him. He's taking his gloves off, and he's like, "Oh, my hands are a little dirty." And then Albert Brooks says, "So are mine." So immediately you're like, okay, he's into something bad. We don't really know what it is. Then he's watching TV. The driver's watching TV with Benicio, and there's some show with sharks in it, and the sharks are bad guys.
Why are the sharks bad guys?
Because sharks are bad guys. I mean,
are there no good sharks?
Right. And no, there's not. And what is Albert Brooks? He's a loan shark.
He's a loan shark.
So I thought that was fantastic. I'd never noticed that before. And as soon as he said it, I'm like, oh my God, that's brilliant. I wrote it down because I didn't want to forget it because I thought it was so great.
He was the last piece of the animal puzzle I was putting together throughout this movie.
Oh.
Because there's a lot of animals. You keep telling your thing. We'll get to my animal theory in a bit.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I don't really have like an overt thing or like an overarching thing. I want to pose, do you think everything that happens in the movie happens?
No, definitely not.
I think that there are moments when the lighting swells.
And shifts. Yeah. Lots of lighting shifts.
So the moment in the elevator, you know what moment I'm talking about?
Yeah, I literally just a second ago when I was watching the movie, looked over at Brooke, my wife, and said, well, this isn't real because you can see the lighting shift. as
The
he
swells, and obviously, if he would have turned around, so to set the stage, they're trying to get out of town because everything is blown up, and the driver and Irene are in the elevator with a guy that's like, "Oh, wrong floor," which he's actually there to kill them,
yeah.
and we see that because he has a holster that the driver spies under his jacket. So they get in the elevator. Everything's
saying that guy was left-handed, by the way, because if the gun was on the other side, he would not have seen it.
Which dumb on that guy's part. Like, why?
Why wouldn't you stand on the other side of the elevator?
Yeah. So they get in the elevator, and the elevator all of a sudden gets a little bigger than it should be because we have all this space for the driver to turn around, look lovingly at Irene. The lights in the elevator swell, they get brighter, the music pulses, they have this long, passionate kiss, and then immediately it's a fight scene where the driver eviscerates this guy, kicks him to a pulp. Great sound design in that regard. Oh my God. But yeah, there are moments where I thought it was just a flair for dramatic, but I think that there are times when the lighting and the music kind of give things away. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to keep just summarizing the film. I think that we've done well getting away from that snare that we were in for a while, just kind of like going over what the movie was.
Right. And hopefully if anyone's watching our videos, they have recently watched the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I've just stated that, Standard is Oscar Isaac's name in the movie for whatever reason. And he is you have a reason?
I do.
Because he's an average, awful father.
Nope.
He doesn't know how to have a child. He tells the story of how he and Irene meet, and it turns out that she was 17, and I'm guessing he was 19, 20, whatever. And Benicio is 9, 10 years old, talking about how he illegally
impregnated.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, and then a year later you popped out. I'm like, bro, maybe when your kid's a teenager, yeah, this is kind of a funny story, but.
And then he fist bumps him.
Yeah, like, hey, I fucked your mom.
And Benicio's like, yeah, Dad.
Yeah. God, Oedipus right here. No, I mean, there's just a few scenes that I thought were really cool. Like when Gosling comes back home and sees two thugs right after Standard's party. He looks at them and continues to watch them as he's driving, and pulls into his face he doesn't even look. He's just looking at the guys, and I'm like, I thought it was a great direction to to further solidify his prowess, I guess, in driving. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's enough summarization. The movie, there we go.
So you had asked me last week if I thought it was a superhero movie. If I assume anyone who's watching this has already seen, if you're looking for analysis of Drive, you've definitely come across the theory that he is a superhero because he puts on a costume, he has a superpower, just the exact same things I said last week.
Right.
I no longer think that.
Right.
This represents my second and third time watching Drive. I've watched it once before. I loved it. And almost immediately after heard, did you know it was a superhero movie? And thought, that's a great explanation for everything I just watched. Perfect. It's a great movie. Because you can watch the movie and go, this is shot really well. The acting is incredible. Mm-hmm. The cinematography is incredible. I watched it when I was getting into cinematography, and it was just huge. I mean, some of the shots are just brilliant,
And what's funny is it has Christina Hendricks and Emily Blunt in just kind of like throwaway roles, two huge names now.
Yeah.
I don't know if I guess their careers were still kind of building at that point, but it's easy to forget that they're in it.
Yeah. I think there is a lot of disposable background, but that it's designed to look that way. So let's jump into one of the things we hinted at a little bit earlier, which is the orientation of animals. Obviously, we can talk about how Bernie is a shark. He is a lone shark. Has this conversation with Benicio about whether or not there are good sharks. And he's like, of course not. Look at him. Just look at him. And if you look at Bernie, this whole movie, at no point are you like, he's probably a good guy, even though, Shannon has no choice but to come to him for help because he can't afford to put this kid in a car and his business is struggling. The driver, let's call him the driver, often represents a scorpion. There's several indications that he could be a scorpion.
Frog.
For example, he's constantly has toothpicks in his mouth. The toothpicks are a representation of the sting that a scorpion has, because that's what you really fear about a scorpion is he's mobile and he can sting. When shortly after the pawn shop heist goes wrong, he's in a hotel room with Bernice, and some people break in to kill him. And the way he kills the first guy is he grabs a pole and stabs him. He has used a stinger to kill because that's what scorpions do. Yeah. He doesn't wrestle the gun away and shoot him. He stabs him.
And he states that he doesn't carry a gun.
He states, he doesn't shoot things. He's the stinger. Albert Brooks is a shark. He has knives, razor sharp knives, just like a shark's weapon is their teeth.
Right.
And Albert Brooks even has them framed in a knife case. These are his teeth. And of course, the ending, you have a scorpion versus a shark where Albert Brooks is stabbing Ryan Gosling, or the driver, and Bernie stabbing the driver, and the driver is stabbing him back. These are animals duking it out, but they're not the only animals. One of the things we have is Cook, the person who sets up the pawn shop. The pawn shop heist. Yeah, thank you. He is always wearing the clothes Puma. Yeah. Lots of animal symbols on him, from his tracksuit to his shoes. He is a Puma guy. But what's weird is when later on, the
jury's still out if he's Bosnian, though.
Okay. No, so later on, he's in Nino's. We're going past that.
It's okay.
Later on, he's in Nino's kitchen, and he says something, and Albert Brooks, Bernie, looks at him and goes, "You freaking monkey," and calls him a monkey. Yeah. And I was like, that's really interesting, because just more animals.
We don't need to get into why it's more interesting.
But what's really significant is while all of these criminals are framed as animals, Irene, her whole apartment and everything around her is plants. So when you first see inside her apartment, there are flowers all over the wall, a painting of flowers. Her mirrors, which mirrors are a big thing too, but all have flowers. Her wallpaper is plants. The cups that she has in her kitchen that they all drink from are covered in flowers. When the driver goes to see her at work, anytime she's in the shot, it's also showing a flower bush outside. She represents plants. And that's why when they go on their little car trip, they're sitting mostly in a tree and playing with dead animals. Dead animals like they hold up crawdad claws. Yeah. Then when he first helps her, the driver first takes her home and puts her groceries in the kitchen. Benicio comes in and he's got a mask of a pumpkin, which is a plant. Right. And the driver looks at him and offers him a toothpick, which is a sting. And so instead of a plant, he could have a stinger. When Irene comes back, he takes his toothpick out of his mouth. He puts the stinger down, and she offers him a glass of water, the opportunity to be a plant, not an animal. For Benicio, these are equal things. He could become a criminal like his father. He could become a plant like his mother. And the driver represents both of those. He could help move Benicio in the direction of crime, or he could move him in the direction of his own mother. Yeah. That's why I don't think that the animals are really all that specific. Usually when a crime is taking place, there is some form of animal nearby, whether it's the scorpion jacket or at the pawn shop, there's actually a deer statue in the background as well. It's just animals constantly surround them. But with Irene, it's always plants.
Plus, at the end, when the driver ends up killing Nino, he says to Bernie, do you know the story of the scorpion and the frog? So I guess that makes Nino the frog.
Totally makes sense.
Yeah. And he's kind of like got like a, I don't know, Ron Perlman kind of looks like a bullfrog, right? I don't know. He's got a big square head.
Yeah. Now, as to why I specifically do not think that it's a superhero movie, I think the movie in general is about identities. The driver himself doesn't have a personality of his own. He has multiple. When we first see him, he's very cool, he's collected, he's calm. For the most part, when he's not impersonating a role of any kind, he's completely silent. He doesn't speak because he's just there filling a role. And that's his day job, is to impersonate other roles. So when we first see him on the set, a really cool shot is we see a mirror of an actor. We don't see the actor's face. We see it in the mirror of him being done up. He's a cop going to do a scene. And then we transition beside the mirror to see Ryan Gosling exactly opposite that actor, putting on that actor's face. We know the actor is the hero. Bryan Cranston will say that. He'll go, you know, he's the hero, the main guy that you're playing. And so he's embodying the role of the hero. And everything's fine when he does that. The character, when he's not embodying any role, you know, the quiet one that's really slow to talk, that disappears several times throughout the movie. At one point, he's sitting in a diner and he's just doing nothing. And someone comes up and is trying to talk to him. And he's like, how about I kick your teeth in if you don't shut up and just, leave me alone. That's not the same guy. Like it's almost from a completely different movie. Later on he has a scene with Shannon, Bryan Cranston, where Bryan Cranston's like, I told him that all you were interested in was the girl. And, the driver's like, how could you do that? Why are you? And he's talking in a New Jersey accent. He's embodying Nino. Like throughout those moments, he's really changing his personality to fit the need. And sometimes he fits the role of Benicio's father.
Mm-hmm.
So Benicio is shown framed with Standard in picture frames. There's a lot of pictures of them together. So who Benicio is going to become, the Standard that he will grow into, is Oscar Isaacs.
Yeah.
And so when we see the driver and Benicio together, we see opportunities for him not to become Standard, really. And that's one of the reasons I think there is a lot of identity play, is that he's trying to fulfill all of these different roles, but at the same time, also removing roles from Benicio's future. One of the things I noticed throughout the movie is the squares or rectangles are often representing crime and the transition into the criminal world. At the very beginning, right after Ryan Gosling commits this crime and goes home, he opens the door and you can see light coming in through the windows, and one of them is a square perfectly encapsulating his face. So like the shadow is just a square with his face in it.
Yeah.
And that will be regularly throughout, just squares with faces in them. Right before he kills Nino, he puts on this different face and goes and looks through the square into Nino's world. The same is true of the knives that Bernie has. They're in a glass square. There's a scene early on at the party for Standard when he comes home, and you see Oscar Isaacs leading Benicio to a door with a square on it and ushering his child towards a life of crime, towards the inevitability of him growing up to be the same type of criminal that he is.
And they're taking out garbage too.
Right, they're taking out garbage.
Which is fine.
This role is similar to what the driver will also fill. At one point, Standard is beaten up by some thugs, and we see Benicio hiding behind what looks like a little outcropping of a wall. So it's not like it's just a hallway, but there's a little part where the wall comes out, and Benicio is trying to hide behind that. And you can see, the driver walk over to Benicio and get down. They become essentially similar in character. That's why Shannon refers to him as the kid, because Shannon is like Standard. And they are both beaten up by men who work for Nino.
Yeah.
And the kid is corrupted by the adult. So the driver is looking at Benicio and seeing his own future in Benicio's future. And I apologize, I jumped ahead. So that scene where Standard is beaten up and Benicio is behind the wall, is repeated in the hotel room. What's her name? Blanche is shot in the bathroom, and there's a little outcropping of drywall that the driver hides behind before he attacks the person who attacked Blanche. And that's why I think this is more about the role of identities instead of the potential futures for Benicio, instead of the potential futures for the driver.
Well, I think I've seen a log line for it. I don't know if it was for the movie or someone did it, but it was what drives you. So I don't know if you're talking like in the same vein, but it was like what pushes you forward? Where are you going to?
There are two scenes I want to compare. Um, the awkward scene where Standard is talking about how Benicio was born and how Benicio entered his life. There is a similar scene where Shannon is telling Irene how the kid or the driver entered his life.
Okay.
And they're really showing these parallel stories of the driver and the kid. I think the driver's motivation, the driving factor for him, is to kind of self-save by keeping Benicio from ever entering the life of crime. And maybe that's why they're often shown sitting next to each other apropos of nothing. Another interesting thing is that they're often shown in shadows, their characters. So Benicio and the driver will be sitting next to each other, and you can see their shadows on the wall. Or you'll see the driver walk into a room, and the kid's shadow's on the wall, and the driver's shadow just slides over the top of it. The only other time shadows are really significant are towards the end when the shark and Bernie and the driver are fighting. Is we don't actually see them fight. What we see is their shadows fighting. So part of me kind of feels that part is also a bit legendary. Now, identity is not just important in the underside for the driver. Everyone has identity issues. You have Nino, who is a Jewish person who owns an Italian pizzeria, talks like he's from New Jersey, and is frustrated that people choose to identify him as Jewish.
And he's in the Italian, like, Philadelphia mob.
Right. And you have Bernie, who he'll go into an Italian restaurant and order Chinese food.
Yeah.
These are just vastly different cultures that have no bearing on who they are, but they're just so identity confused that they can fulfill all of these different roles. Yeah. So I've got a couple more. One of the interesting things is wrist wear. Everyone in this movie wears something on their wrist. I know it's silly, but every criminal wears a watch. All of the big criminals wear watches. Nino, Bernie, Shannon, the driver, Cook wears a watch. The smaller players, what's her name? The woman who goes on the heist?
Blanche, right?
Blanche, yeah. Right. She and Standard both wear metal bands, like cuffs, on their wrists.
Okay.
And then you have Irene and Benicio, who wear flexible jelly wristbands, a lot of them. And to me, that indicates that there are steps in between things, and that flexibility offers them the opportunity to choose to become criminals or not. Whereas everyone else is kind of locked into that. And it pays a lot of attention to the wrist wear that people have. That's essentially Ryan Gosling's whole character is based around that watch, this 5-minute window. He's always looking at his watch, checking the time. And there are so many shots that just feature arms. Like right when he gets shot and has to get the bullets removed, the next scene is his arm out, and it's just pretty much just a close-up of his watch.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, okay, and the last thing is numbers. So this is a really cool one. Numbers are everywhere in this movie. Obviously, the very first thing is there is a 5-minute window. Anything happens before or after that 5 minutes, anything less than 1 or greater than 5, and it's not of concern to the criminal driver. So, for example, Irene lives in 408, where he lives in 405, right on the line in between what is his concern as a criminal and not his concern as a criminal. So he runs into Irene at a supermarket called the Big Six Market. 6 definitely outside of 5. So we are not looking at the criminal driver. When he and Irene run into the criminal in the elevator shaft, or in the elevator, they get on at 4. So we are not outside of that range. And right when they're getting in the elevator, it really focuses on that 4 because this is within the 5 minutes. Anytime there is a number present on the screen, which is constantly throughout. For example, he meets... my mind just blanked on this one. Actually, I already covered it. I was going to talk about the market, Big Six Market.
Okay.
But yeah, so it will continually repeat that when he is the criminal, the numbers will be somewhere between 1 and 5. When he loses Irene after the elevator scene, she gets out. She gets out on floor B, or B, meaning basement or something like that. But it's outside the range of 1 to 5. It's less than 1. She's no longer in between floors 1 and 5. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you always pick up on things that I would have never seen. Yeah. I got to open my eyes more.
It's really subtle. I think a lot of times the filmmakers will make spur of the moment decisions that affect, hey, I'm making a movie where this is a thing, so let's choose the one, if we're picking between 5 cars, let's pick the car that more closely represents what the scene goes for. So I think it's a lot of small decisions, not a big control decision.
I mean, Big Six Market's a real place. So
yeah,
I wonder if, and it would take me I wonder if it came to his mind while they're driving around. It's an hour and 10 minutes away from me. I could go there.
You could go to Big Six Market.
I could go to Big Six. I wonder if it's something like they're driving around doing like location scouting and they're like, oh, Big Six, like let's shoot animals in the movie.
Animals and plants.
I'm like, yeah, actually, look at that. Animals and plants. Perfect. This is the movie Drive right here. Real human being.
And a real hero.
Yeah, man. I welled up at that point. Because I'm like, he is a hero. Oh, he's his papa.
I watched that movie and was like, okay, I get it. I get the song. I get what you're going for. And, he is the role of the hero at that point. When he puts on the mask, he's playing the hero of that movie. Like, and maybe that's what all these rectangles are for. All these squares and rectangles is, Benicio watching TV. If you look at the scene where, the driver goes and beats up Cook, the models, the strippers who are behind him are perfectly still. They don't react to any of this. They're just like frozen because they don't really matter. They're not they're not relevant to the scene you're watching. They are as lifeless as the background. And
Just this.
the same when he goes to kill Nino is you have Nino is like uproarious laughing, and the woman he's standing next to is just like, I'm here too.
Yeah. So I asked you at the beginning if you thought that everything in the movie happens. What parts do you feel are, I guess, inside? I don't know what they would be. Are they inside his head? Are they just kind of asides? Like what do you think is not real?
I almost think this is.
I'm going to think about it. I don't think the drive happened with Irene and Benicio. I think he took them home, and I think that he imagined driving them around.
I think, and this is, if I'm going to throw out a huge, like, this is, I would not put money on this. I think the other things that I've said so far, I think I could easily go, yep, director intended this or this. Here's one that I would say 25% maybe. I think the driver, the reason he doesn't have a name is Benicio is making him up.
Okay.
Inventing him whole cloth. So the person who rescues them from the grocery store, he just says, okay, that's also the person who works at the garage and gives us a ride home. That's also the person who gets rid of my criminal dad, because he is in love with his mom. He loves his mom. It's not romantic love,
right?
But he envisions the driver as the kid's hero who comes in and saves his mom from the criminals. And that's why we have the shadow similarity, is towards the end when the shadow is killing Bernie. Maybe ultimately that's Benicio himself killing his father, or killing the penchant for a criminal future.
Okay.
And maybe just everything the driver does is completely imaginary. And that's why it has that surreal feel to it.
I mean, maybe. I mean, there's a chance that, yeah, like he has, I don't know. I struggle with that, I guess, as I understand it, because are you saying that he's created all the situations that he gets into? Because, I mean, there are moments that Irene and Benicio are not even a part of, like everything with...
All that's fabricated. That's what I would say if I were to make this into a film theory. So one of the things is there is a very surreal feel to the driver going to beat up Cook, the driver going to kill Nino. They are surreal, and they reflect parts of Benicio's world. So one of the things is there is a painting in the hallway of the apartment where they both live, which has a bunch of waves and foggy weather. When the driver goes to kill Nino, he coincidentally knocks him off the road at the beach and then drags him into the ocean and drowns him, which is different from, just, what are the odds of that when compared to maybe Benicio sees that painting every day and thinks about it, and so it enters his mind as to a potential solution for what the driver could have done to kill Nino. Yeah.
Just a side note, I think the mask that he wears when he's doing the stunts looks a lot like Tom Cruise. Every single time I watch this movie, I'm like, hey, Tom Cruise is in this.
I was like, they hired the White Rock.
I mean, maybe with the bald head, yeah, but like really look at it, he looks like Tom Cruise.
You can see the actor it's based on. There is a real quick shot as it's going through the mirror. So you don't really see his
Right.
face, you see the reflection of it as he's sitting there talking to his makeup artists wearing the costume. And then we go to the other side of the mirror where it's Ryan Gosling putting on the mask to
Yeah.
look like the other guy.
He looks so surreal in it because like
Yeah.
all you can see are his eyes behind it, and he like it doesn't move right. And it's like, yeah, okay. So you've got your hand in the pot of almost nothing this movie actually happens. Whereas I think that there are moments that the driver, I guess, imagines, or like, this is what I like would do, with the elevator being one. The big scene that I guess is ambiguous in this sense is the end. So he's been stabbed in the gut. He kills Bernie, and for whatever reason, leaves $1 million of cash sitting there with him.
He's the good guy.
And gets in his car and kind of pauses, and you're like, oh, he's dying, he's dead. And then like the light fills the car, you can hear a real hero, and then all of a sudden he moves, puts the car in drive, and drives off. And I'm like, okay, did he die? Or is he going to go get Irene and Benicio and live a life? I mean, is there a drive faster, or?
Well, I definitely think he doesn't come back because Irene goes and knocks on his door and he doesn't answer.
After that scene?
Yep. It's the last. Oh, it's among the last things is Irene goes to knock on his door and he doesn't answer, implying, I think, that he doesn't come back. Yeah.
Damn. But do you think he lives, though?
I don't think it matters. I don't think he's real enough to live necessarily.
Okay.
And that's kind of maybe the author is telling us it doesn't matter, or saying whatever you think is right.
Right.
That ending definitely makes me feel like Benicio made things up because, you know, his relationship with Shadows and Benicio. At one point, Benicio is playing with a Triceratops. And a Triceratops, like a scorpion, is an animal that kills by piercing. So part of me thinks that Benicio has made up a narrative about him being able to fight and kill by piercing things. We talked a little bit about movies that were designed for an audience that had traditionally not been appealed to. And I want to move that direction. So a little background, I think I've told you this, Heath, before, but a little background is when I started getting into cinema, like not just watching movies, but like cinema as an art form, I fell in love with the director Spike Lee. He made movies. We're not going to watch a Spike Lee film. I would love to, but I am not a person to talk about Spike Lee.
Either of us are.
Right. But so Spike Lee made movies for an audience that was not the audience I had seen all of the other movies made for. And he created filmmaking techniques that are absolutely brilliant.
Oh, yeah.
The movie I fell in love with was Do the Right Thing.
Yeah.
Which, while I could not necessarily relate to the characters, I had never seen camera movements like that, framing the audio thing. I firmly believe Do the Right Thing is a superhero movie to the millionth degree. They all have superhero names. They're not called like their birth names. They have superhero names. And I could talk for hours on Do the Right Thing.
what's so great about Do the Right Thing is that during the slur rant, or montage, or not montage, anyway, the camera starts low and speeds up into their face, and they get right in their face, and then at the end, the camera is static, and Sam Jackson rolls towards it to get into the face of it, and it's so like, I mean, it's in your face, like it's So that was really cool. That was something that we discussed in film school is how, what do you think that represents? What do you think that means? Because it was a deliberate choice.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. But I've had the pleasure of watching Spike Lee grow as a filmmaker, but also watching the audience for Spike Lee films grow. And I think that really shaped how I look for new directors. You're blazing a new trail, forming a new audience, and doing things that have never been done before. And to me, that has spurred my love of directors for audiences that aren't me. That's how I got into Kung Fu movies. That's how I got into, all of these foreign films, is mostly just because I want to see new filmmakers. I want to see filmmakers with perspectives that aren't mine.
Sure.
And lately, the current is there is a filmmaker who has started making films for a new audience, and producers have realized the audience is there. And that was Jordan Peele, who said, I like horror movies. My community doesn't have quality horror movies yet. And he came out with some great horror films, Us, as well as Get Out, brilliant films. And he's a brilliant filmmaker. I look forward to his future, but that's not where I want to go next week. There is a new horror film specifically targeting an audience that isn't me, with a filmmaker I've never seen before, and I want to watch that movie. So our movie for next week is Antebellum.
I was hoping to God you weren't going to say Hereditary.
Oh, no.
Oh, man.
I want to watch Antebellum, and I'm excited about it. Janelle Monáe is a musical artist I fell in love with. God, was that 10 years ago? I know I was even late to the Janelle Monáe party, even back then, but I know that a lot of people I know now still don't really know who she is musically.
Yeah.
But, she was always a sci-fi style musician, and I loved her music. But so now I'm excited about a new genre of movie, a genre of horror movie made for an audience that isn't me, and I'm excited about it. So I want to watch Antebellum.
Okay, yeah, I have seen it pop up. As I really do not like horror movies, I've had no interest really in watching it. But that's kind of what this is for, is to push each other in new directions.
I've never seen it as well. I've never seen it. So I
would hope not. It just came out. So you did watch Drive twice. So
yeah. But I've never seen it. I want to. I have not seen much as far as the trailers go. All I know is that typically the standard audiences hate it, and the people who like wide varieties of movies love it. So that's going to be me. I'm going to love it. I worry a lot about hating it. I worry that I'm going to hate it. I'm scared to dislike the movie. But I think the less I learn about it, the more fun it's going to be. And not fun, it's a horror movie.
It can be fun. Us was a blast. Us was a really fun movie to watch.
Yeah, it is a fun movie to watch. That's true. I love Jordan Peele's whole career.